The truth, indeed, is something that mankind, for some mysterious reason, instinctively dislikes. Every man who tries to tell it is unpopular, and even when, by the sheer strength of his case, he prevails, he is put down as a scoundrel. To me, there's nothing mysterious about this. This world is run by the father of lies. We'll get to that in a bit. You remember the Rod Serling quote from last week's opener that the importance of tyranny lies in control of the truth. The truth must be silenced, violently put down, failing everything else. And yes, every man who tries to tell it is unpopular, and even when the strength of his case prevails, he is put down as a scoundrel. We have seen a rogues gallery of these so called scoundrels as the tyranny of the current regime escalates. Folks like Alex Berenson, who warned us and for his trouble was banned from all social media platforms, acting as Pravda censors and de facto propaganda ministers for the regime. Virtually everything this man had to say has come true. Same with this gentleman, Peter McCullough, the vaccine skeptic, as he was called. Turns out everything he said was correct, borne out most poignantly and most irrefutably by the recently released Cochrane report. These brave truth tellers that came forward at the expense of their own careers to expose the weaponization of the Justice Department under the Merrick Garland DOJ at the expense of their own careers, their own professional reputations, their own persons across the board, and given the nature of this regime, potentially even at risk to their families or their own well being. I don't need to belabor how I feel about Elon Musk or his importance in exposing the way that they tried to control the truth, not just with the COVID pandemic, not just with the corruption of the regime, but using social media platforms as de facto censors. You see, the Constitution only forbids the government from censoring information, in the same sense that the government is only allowed to go so far infiltrating their political enemies, so they use the Southern Poverty Law Center to do their dirty work for them to avoid a constitutional crisis. We had spoken of, and it had been obvious for a long time, that social media platforms were, in fact, acting as de facto propaganda ministries. Thanks to Elon Musk and the work of this truth teller, Matt Taibbi, those were exposed, and we don't need to belabor the efforts of this truth teller. You guys might not recognize him, but this is Glenn Greenwald. You see, he's the guy that broke the big story as a whistleblower and truth teller about this gentleman, a man by the name of Edward Snowden. How ironic for a Cold War Reagan kid such as myself that this man, in order to tell the truth about the land of the free, is now having to live in exile in the former evil empire, all for the crime of telling the truth about this regime, the deep state, the power structure, for lack of a better word, a tyrant by any other name. We'll elaborate more on that later. And of course, truth tellers wouldn't be spoken of in completion without referring to the works of Julian Assange. Now, like most of Mencken's so-called scoundrels, he's not the most savory individual, and there are a lot of things to dislike about the man, legitimate reasons even to dislike the man. But he did more with a single website and a couple of low-level informants to expose the corruption of the state here in the so-called land of the free than so-called journalists had done in decades. Yes, indeed, boys and girls, it does seem to be this mystery. For some mysterious reason, the truth is something that mankind instinctively dislikes. I don't think there's anything mysterious about it, and I don't think there's anything instinctive about it. He spoke of it in Scripture. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Where is there any mystery in a world controlled by the father of lies that people are reluctant to deal in truth. Nothing mysterious about that at all. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't qualify that with a little old quote from Jonathan Swift, because it happens to be a personal favorite. Although the devil be the father of lies, he seems, like other great inventors, to have lost much of his reputation by the continual improvements that have been made upon him. You see, when he was first unleashed on this world, he couldn't have dreamed of the power of media or governments to control and suppress the truth. He could not have counted on a media that would prop up the likes of this fraud and refuse to expose him. He could not have predicted such a corrupt Department of Justice leading what is arguably the most powerful government in the supposedly free world. He could not have predicted Pravda or TASS. Pravda or TASS in the Soviet Union would have made Joseph Goebbels jealous by their propaganda power, but Pravda and TASS have nothing on this latest generation of gatekeepers and news whores, because, as a Russian friend of mine once told me, the one good thing about living under communism is that you knew that anything that issued from the mouth of a media source, whether it was something you read in a paper, something you heard on the radio, something you saw on television, you knew that it was government propaganda, and you were therefore forced to read between the lines. People hear from these gatekeepers, and they think that they are getting objective truth. I don't really believe that any more than you do. As we've said before, cowardice should have been one of the 7 deadly sins, and intellectual cowardice, in my estimation, is the lowest form of cowardice. And with the father of lies and his minions running the show, truth is going to be a rare commodity, and those who speak it are going to be excoriated and rejected as scoundrels. But getting back to Mencken, the trouble with fighting for human freedom is that one spends most of one's time defending scoundrels. For it is against scoundrels that oppressive laws are first aimed, and oppression must be stopped at the beginning if it is to be stopped at all. Given the loose and relative definition as it has been redefined for the word scoundrel, we are going to have to fight for human freedom by defending scoundrels such as these, and these, and these, and these, and these. And in the final analysis, when it comes down to looking back in history, if we are able to defend this freedom, we have to stop it at the beginning if it is to be stopped at all. And on the side of history, you can go ahead and put me down with the scoundrels, son. I'll own that. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and nobody else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. Speaking hate facts to dataphobes since 1969. I am the Reverend, and it is time once again for the Sunday sermon, boys and girls. Don't get black-pilled. Don't get down. I'm in an outstanding mood. We got wins coming up, stuff to discuss. Everybody in for the drum roll. Come on. Hard charging out of the starting gate as we do every single Sunday with the Sunday sermon. The bumper music from the gut-stomping rock and roll band Red Desert. Out of the once great American city, now smoldering embers and ruins of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. Let's just call it what it is. But gut-stomping music right out of the starting gate in any case. A lot of good stuff going on this week, man. We are up against it. We are constantly up against it, but we are winning. No black pills around here, man. We haven't got the time for it, and we can't waste the energy on it. We are moving forward incrementally, That is the way that they have taken us down, is incremental, and the only way we get it back is incremental. And we're winning, guys. We're winning. Hands up, chin down. Put that forehead out there. Let them break their hands, man. Let's do a little roll call right out and see how many people are here. The original Sinner Sister herself, Miss Emmy, is on board. Glad to see you. We have Roman from OpiumTales.com, one of my oldest and dearest friends. Good to see you here. And, of course, his lovely wife, Carrie, along for the ride. What do we got? What do we got? Benny Butchie. Oh, dude, I love the new log-on name. The Mighty Mighty Bone Sayabongsa. Looking forward to seeing you sooner than later, my good friend and my brother in Christ, man. Glad to have you on board. Who else we got? Oh, look at that. The Mighty Mighty Stone, listening while gaming. It better be a first-person shooter, Mike, or at least a real-time strategy game. I'm saying that like I'm the authority. The last games that I played were Unreal Tournament 2003 and Rise of Nations. Take that for what it's worth. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Speaking of people I'm going to be seeing sooner than later, my other brother in Christ, Brother Jude Howe, my brother in Christ, my brother in Iron, my brother. Good to see you here, man. Good to see you, and it's going to be really good to see you next week. What do you got? Brother Mark, good to see you as well. I hope you were at least going to make an appearance at some point over the course of this coming weekend. And if not, hopefully I'll get to see you, Brother Clem. Oh, look at that. The Frenchie showed up. The Mighty Mighty Frenchman. I would make a joke about cheese-eating surrender monkeys right now, Clem, but it's you, and I respect you, and I wouldn't want to... Besides that, man, your Foreign Legion guys, let's admit it. Legion guys are pretty freaking badass, And I got to give it to you, man. There's a big pushback. We give a lot of grief to the French around here because it's what we do. But the French are really pushing back because they are having to deal with this. And Clem would be the guy more so than myself to be able to give you a little firsthand account of that. But the French are seeing the end results of a lot of these things that they're trying to put the push on globally, and particularly here in the United States, they're trying to put the push on. They're seeing the final results of that. And you get a little bit of pushback. Multiculturalism has failed. There, I said it, and I won't take it back. What is that? I'm very pro-French. They paid for our revolution. Excellent observation, Roman. Excellent observation. T-shirt this week, courtesy of Jesus Didn't Tap. Jesus Didn't Tap. You can find the merch online. May he rest in peace, Jason David Frank, Houstonian, Houston MMA guy, Houston skydiver guy. We ran in a lot of the same circles. Jason and I were not particularly close, but I did know the man. I did know him to be a man of faith and a man of character who tragically passed. And anyway, the brand is still up and running. So for all you guys who are out there representing for the boss man and his carpenter kid, Jesus Didn't Tap, you can find him online. Lots of good stuff, man. Lafayette is also one of my heroes. He was a badass. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We could go over Revolutionary War history. Thankfully, people like Roman and I have been around long enough to at least have been in like first or second grade when the bicentennial came around. That was a little piece of history that we got to experience. The 200th birthday, the 200th celebration of American independence back in 1976, where of course merchandisers took off and ran with it, but merchandisers are going to do what merchandisers are going to do. Advertisers are going to do what advertisers are going to do. That's just the nature of the beast. But I can tell you, back then, being a first grader with a thirst for knowledge and an absolute reading junkie, it was really cool because there was this wealth of information out there about the history of this country. And I can remember being a first grader reading about things like separation of powers in the Constitution and the struggles of the founders and all this stuff. And it did instill me with a certain strong sense of pride for which I make no apologies to this day, as well thought of as it is to piss on the country right now. I make no apologies for being a proud American, man. You got to own your history, good, bad, and indifferent. Let me go ahead and fade the bumper music out. Once again, that bumper music, Older No Wiser, from a band called Red Desert. I got to tell you, man, I really appreciate those guys. Because I have been using that as bumper music without a license and basically bounced it off of them. And they were like, cool, dude, no problem. I sent them a video copy of a couple of the early sermons. And I was like, look, if this is going to be an issue, I can find some other bumper music, but check out their merch online, check out their music online. Red Desert, little gut stomping rock and roll band. You guys know I'm into the doom stuff, and we could get into set tripping, and well, technically that's not really doom, bro. It's more like kind of a desert stoner vibe. Yeah, whatever, man. Do another dab rig, shut the hell up. I'm going to call them a doom band. I don't care. If they take an issue with that, well, then they can take it up with me. But in the meantime, they're a gut stomping rock and roll band. Definitely worth checking out. Red Desert, and the name of the track is Older, No Wiser. It should, at the very least, be on your workout playlist already. So, a couple of sponsor shout outs. I want to get out of the way real quick, and we're going to jump right into this thing. First of all, brother James Pearson, and I will be seeing you this Thursday, my friend. We got to get that coordinated. I am going to be, we'll just go ahead for full disclosure here. I don't worry about it much. People are like, hey, man, what about OPSEC? You're telling people you're going to be away from the house. The guy that looks after my house right now is a really good brother of mine who also happens to be a Marine. I don't sweat it. If you think that me being out of town would be a good time to do something stupid to the BART bunker, knock yourself out, because by the time my bro gets through with you, you are going to wish that I had still been here, because I'm a little older and have maybe this much more of a sense of, okay, no, I don't. I'm lying. I'm totally making that up. In any case, I'm going to be flying into Dallas this Thursday. This coming weekend, I am going to be at Fort Honey Badger with Brother Sonny Puzikas. We are going to be getting beaten with the humility stick, and some very, very close friends of mine that I'm looking forward to seeing, and it is going to be an excellent learning experience. You guys who are in Texas, if you have somehow missed it the first 1,000 times that I'd mentioned it, you have a tremendous training resource right there in Jacksonville. Fort Honey Badger, Sonny Puzikas is like my own flesh and blood. He is an incredible mind. He will take you to some very, very dark places, but you will come out sharper, humbled, and harder to kill. And that on Planet Bart is a trifecta. So, speaking of Planet Bart trifectas, let me get these sponsor shout outs out of the way. Roman and his lovely wife Carrie, and Allie and Roxy, Bevy, beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. He is doing beautiful watercolors of beautiful naked women, and you've got beautiful naked women. You've got artistic and creative endeavors and testosterone driven commentary. That is a Planet Bart trifecta as well. So go check him out. He's also one of my oldest and dearest friends. Oldest stories we could tell. And one day when the statute of limitations runs out, we might actually share some of them. So that'll be cool. Actually, our origin story is actually pretty freaking cool. We'll make sure to do that. Hey, folks, as Roman was just saying, smash that like button. The algorithm matters. Yes, the algorithm does matter. I can barely pronounce the word, but it does actually matter. And the more hits we get and the more likes we get, allegedly, if they're playing things the way they're supposed to be, it's going to bump us up and make us and give us some more exposure. You and I both know that with shadow banning, that's not always the case, but at least we can clear our conscience and say that we gave it our best effort. One more sponsor shout out, of course, and I just got to partake of some of this week. I had a brother of mine, Kelly, who was up from Texas. He's working a gig over in Pullman. He said, dude, I want to try this Nordic Smoke. I've already go on and on and on about it. I got with Dusty over at Nordic Smoke, and we got hooked up with some ribs and with some chicken, and I turned another Texan onto it, and now we have another fan and another true believer. Nordic Smoke, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Yeah, but what about shut up, sit down? You're wrong. The only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Casey and Dusty Tellison, my Viking brothers over there. I got to hang out, which I don't really get a chance to do very, very often. I would love to be able to spend more time, actual quality time, actually talking, with Dusty and just hanging out, shooting the shit. I don't really get to do that often. And when I went to pick that up, our little care package the other night, it was really, really good. We got to sit there for a couple of hours and just catch up and converse and fellowship. And he is a man of character. He is a man of strength. His brother is a man of strength and character and integrity. They produce a fantastic product, and they are outstanding friends and outstanding individuals. We're talking about Nordic Smoke Barbecue, and he let me in on a little secret. They are going to be bottling their sauces and their rubs, and they are going to be available for shipping soon and very soon. Check them out on social media. They're working on getting a proper website together. All that stuff is going to be available at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. All right, what do you got? Liked and shared. Thank you, Miss Emmy. What have we got going on? Well, first of all, let's jump right into what we all know and love, and that is our opening segment, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. I want you to imagine a thunderous roar of applause because I still don't have the sound effect back on the soundboard yet. I'm going to take a little sip of liquid enthusiasm and we will jump right back in. This, by the way, they do not pay me for a sponsorship, but I use their product and I endorse it. This is Iron Infidel, the Battle Bottle. This is what I keep my liquid enthusiasm in when I'm doing my sermons and when I'm at the gym. It's a phenomenal little piece of equipment. If you don't want to carry a full gym bag, you just want to travel light to the gym, or you're one of those CrossFit guys, and you're just out in the field working out someplace, all you have to carry is the bottle. They got a spot for your wallet, they got a spot for your phone, they got a clip for your keys, and they got some molly webbing on here to put additional pouches on. And it's about 64 ounces of whatever fluid you choose to put in here. It's a nice little product. One day I hope to have them on as an official sponsor, but right now I'm just going to prop them up for free. It's a bad business model, but I dig what they have going on. So, kids, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. You guys already know, Ryan and I bonded over a lot of things. Ryan is the guy that opened the door for me to begin my crane journey. And one of the things that we have bonded over for years and years and years is that we are both repositories of useless information. We know a little something about everything. Is that going to get us a college degree? No, it is not. Are we smarter than most degree people? Yes, we are. Are we murdered to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with? You bet your ass. In any case, every week we go down Ryan's Rabbit Hole. We get off the beaten path. Sometimes it dovetails with what the sermon's about. Sometimes it does not, but it takes you out of the comfort zone, a little poke into your bread oven, taking you to some places, some things that you might not have been familiar with, different direction, expand your intellectual horizons a little bit. Some weeks we go historical. Some weeks we go esoteric, where he really makes me work for it. Some weeks we go political. Some weeks we go conspiratorial. This is going to be a delicate mixture of all of the above, boys and girls, because last week, Monday, we did not get to celebrate it on the actual sermon. Normally I do it the week before, but because of other things, I decided we would wait until the week after. 9/11, September 11th of 2001, the day that everything basically changed. It put us on the trajectory that has brought us here. It was the event that ushered in the police state era. It ushered in the war on terror. It ushered in the surveillance state. It ushered in the ability for more egregious violations of civil liberties that we have ever seen in our adult life. And everybody said it was just a temporary thing. It was just until the emergency is over. And here we are 22 years hence, that we are still living with the results of that. Several thousand people died in those towers. We could get into whether or not it was prior knowledge and it was allowed to happen. We could get into whether it was a 100% coordinated effort by the deep state, planned and executed. I will say for the record, I do not believe that. You could make a case for any number of things, but as I have always said here, when it comes to conspiracy theories, we will never know what actually happened, stem to stern. We will never know. In the same way as Oklahoma City or the JFK assassination or the first attack on the World Trade Center. We will never know. What you can say with 100% certainty is that the official story and the official narrative is always, at least partially, and sometimes almost exclusively, bullshit. We are going to address one factor, one and only one factor, because we could easily spend an entire program on the entire 9/11 thing. But today we are going to explore the one that gives me fits, even if I were to concede the entire rest of the official narrative, and that is Building 7. World Trade Center Building 7 was further away from the Twin Towers than any other building in that complex. Okay? It was not hit by any substantial amounts of debris. Okay. It was not hit by an aircraft. There were structures just as big as WTC 7 directly across the street from the Twin Towers that the towers basically collapsed on that remained standing. But Building 7, 4+ hours after the major disaster, with minor interior structure fires, pancaked into its own footprint as if out of spite. Building 7 will be the one factor, even if I were to concede the entire 9/11 Commission's work, Building 7 would be the one thing that gives me pause. You cannot justify it as jet fuel melting steel beams, as they excuse the Twin Towers. You can't do that. Wasn't hit by a jet. Wasn't hit by substantial amounts of jet fuel. The fires were contained to the interior of the building. And regardless, if those fires were there, they would have been burning randomly on random floors, on random corners of the building, certainly not in any pattern that would have caused a collapse to pancake the entire building into its own footprint. Was it a controlled demolition? We will never know. One of the facets of this, though, and the actual focus of the rabbit hole, is a video that circulated on the BBC, and you can still find it online. It's buried in the algorithm, buried deeply in the algorithm. And that is a BBC reporter a half hour before Building 7 imploded. Actually, a little bit longer than a half hour. Ryan, 37 minutes, if I'm correct on that. Some 37 minutes before Building 7 pancaked into its own footprint, describing, first of all, alerting the public that Building 7 had collapsed. That to further today's tragedy, Building 7, another building in the World Trade Center complex, has collapsed. And described the collapse of the building, pancaking into its own footprint. Only one problem with that. I want you looking at the screen right now to imagine that I am that BBC reporter, right? And that over to this side, there is a monitor. There is a monitor. And on that monitor, they are showing a remote camera view of the World Trade Center complex. And on that monitor, as I'm describing that Building 7 has just pancaked into its own footprint, you can clearly see that Building 7 is still standing and on fire. Not an inferno, not huge flames leaping to the skies, but a tremendous amount of smoke emanating from Building 7, as I'm describing to you that Building 7 has collapsed and pancaked into its own footprint. You guys tracking? There are any number of irregularities with regard. Yep, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ryan. Waiting for you to chime in on that. Live on air in front of the building, mind you. Look up the video. You guys have heard me go on tears, and I've been particularly hostile and particularly vitriolic about the dab rig, bong ripper conspiracy crowd. Part of that is owing to a personal situation, but a big part of that personal situation and the way that it developed is people like that are the ones who are standing in the way of looking at very real considerations and questions. Again, from the very beginning, what was the first thing I said? We will never know. We will never know what happened. I'm not pontificating as an authority. The day that it happened, I ran my mouth quite a bit. The years following, I continued to run my mouth quite a bit. This is the mark of a thinking person. A thinking person can change their opinion based on new information and say, this may not have been right. I may have read this in error. I did not have this information and I formed my opinion based on an incomplete or faulty assessment of the available facts. There's a lot of stuff that I believed the day that it happened. I could tell you the story, my personal story, and my memories of the day that it happened. I'll spare you. That's for another program. The point is this: when you have legitimate questions to ask, you should ask them. What did we go over in the opener? And what did we go over in the Rod Serling quote from the opener last week? The one thing that superstates, tyrannical states, count on is the suppression of the truth. How do we get to the truth? We get to the truth by asking questions. Even the cult of science can respect that, right? Not really. They don't live up to it. But if we're truly practicing the scientific method, what do we begin with? We ask questions. Some of those questions are stupid. The Bong Ripper crowd and the Dabrig crowd, they hinder the rest of us trying to ask reasonable questions that are formulated on reasonable and legitimate concerns, such as a video of a BBC report. And could you make a case? Could you make it a case that it was an oopsie, that it was a time delay? Yes, you can make a case for that. Sure, and I'm willing to entertain that case. There's not one single fact that I am afraid to examine or as Joey, I'm glad you showed up right here, brother. The Sultan of Sarcasm himself. Joey's got the greatest caption ever for that kind of stuff. When you ask a question and they don't have a good answer, shut up, he explained. It's the greatest caption ever, because that is the approach. Look into Building 7, World Trade Center, Building 7. That's going to be one search term. The other search term is going to be Building 7 BBC video, right? Careful what website you use BBC as a search term on, because that's going to be a whole different tower you're going to be looking at. But BBC reporter, Building 7. The video's there. The internet is forever. Here's the interesting thing about that, because, and I've closed the window, so I'm going to open it back up. Building 7 BBC, right. So, Building 7 BBC, first one that comes up is BBC News reports the collapse of WTC 7 before it actually happens. Then they've got several of the usual debunking things. Sky history. Why did Building 7 collapse? 9/11 conspiracy theories debunked. You go to that search and it says, about halfway down the page here, yes, that the BBC reporter was reporting on the collapse of Building 7 30 some odd minutes before it happened. And that, yes, this is an irrefutable fact. That report actually did win out. They go on to explain why the building pancaked, how it pancaked, all the intellectual gymnastics that you would expect. But the one thing that they never deny is that video actually did go out. Does that necessarily... Thank you. Yeah. Does that necessarily indicate anything? No, it does not. No. Okay? Not even for the Bong River crowd. No, that doesn't mean anything. But the fact that they don't want you to ask questions, reasonable questions like that, should give you some indication that they are not entirely comfortable with their own case. If you ask me about anything that I hold as a core belief, I will discuss it at length, right off the cuff. No Google searches, no Google Sheets, with the facts that I have stored away in this repository of useless information. I will not tell you, shut up, you can't ask questions like that. Bong rippers, dab hitters, you make it difficult for us, because we are asking reasonable questions about why a building that wasn't an inferno, that wasn't hit by debris or a jet, pancakes into its own footprint hours after the fact. Building that also housed the CIA, by the way, you can look that up. That is verifiable. We want to ask questions about that, but you're too busy talking about radio-controlled planes and holograms. You are not helping. I would never want you shut down. I love that you're able to speak freely. I would rather, what was it Lincoln said? Better someone sit mute and be thought an idiot than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt. I'm glad that you that big glass dick and let me tell you about the holograms and radio controlled planes, dude. I love that you do that. I like to know the idiots so I don't waste my time conversing with them. But Building 7, that's worth looking into. Definitely worth looking into. Any number of other things are worth looking into. The main thing I want you to come away from this with is ask the questions. Ask the questions. Right. Thank you. Thank you. The birds aren't real. Flat Earth. Tartarian. Tartarian mud flood. Okay. Yeah. You calling bullshit on me? No. So you shut up. Sit down. You're wrong. Okay. I own that. I will own that. I will own that. Okay, that's cool, Joey. I like the fact that you're calling me on my own shit. That's okay. That's entirely fair. That's entirely fair. What I'm not doing is postulating that with the full faith and backing of the United States government and every social media platform. I'm just a guy with a big freaking mouth. So, good catch, Joey. Good catch. This is the spirit, guys. This is the spirit that I'm talking about. Cultivating a community where we are not afraid to check each other on each other's bullshit, and where I don't sit up here like a guru and look at Joey checking me on my own BS and say, man, you can't. I'm the guy with the live. You can't. I think it's beautiful. You checked me. Well done. Well done. Anyway, guys, that is a rabbit hole for the week in commemoration of the 22nd anniversary of the tragic events at the World Trade Center. Whether you believe that it was coordinated by the deep state, whether you believe that it was 19 hijackers from countries that we wound up not bombing, whether you believe that it was radio controlled planes and holograms, no matter what you believe, it was a tragedy. Thousands of people lost their lives. And as a result of the events of that day, this country has never been the same. The trajectory that we are on now, deeply in now, would not have been possible without the events of that day. So ask questions. Building 7, WTC. That is Ryan's rabbit hole for the week. All right, boys and girls. As I said in the opener, a tyrant by any other name. You guys know your Shakespeare. Rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. In fact, Joey, this was just for you, buddy. that little chyron rolling at the bottom, Joey, that's just for you. Boy, you that was good. That was good. Everybody right now, give Joey a round of applause. Give Joey a round of applause. He called the big man on his bullshit. Right on, man. That's beautiful. Anyway, a tyrant by any other name. You guys know your Shakespeare. Rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. Guess what, guys? A tyrant by any other name is still a tyrant. Isn't it funny how all the biggest tyrannies in the world are always listed as the People's Republic of whatever, the Democratic Socialist Republic of whatever? You always know that there's tyranny behind that. And you get to play the word games. When you get to play the word games, thank you, bro. When you get to play the word games, you get to play games with people's perception. You get to play games with the truth. Tyranny, by any definition, lines up with where we're at, largely due to the long-term results of what was set in motion on September 11th, 2001. We get hyperbolic about it. We do. We get hyperbolic about it because we see what the end result is, and we see that slippery slope is not a fallacy when there is historical precedent. Things that are going on right now, we touched on it a little bit last week. New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham, on the basis of a public health emergency, basically suspended the gun rights of certain citizens of New Mexico, just with the wave of her hand. Wave of her hand. It's a public health emergency. I have the power. Cops, don't lecture me about constitutionality. Shut up and do what you're told and start confiscating people's guns and arresting people. And remember, boys and girls, nobody's coming after your guns. Guys, it's not coming, it's here. The fact that she had the audacity to even postulate such a thing. But let's dig a little deeper, shall we? The New York Times. You'll love the way the New York Times handled it. Facing pushback from both parties, New Mexico governor scales back firearms order. Let me fix that headline for you, Sparky. New Mexico tyrant Karen gets her ass handed to her, realizes she can't enforce it, and doubling down didn't help her politically. She realizes that she's not going to be picked to be in the running when they dump Joe Biden overboard. And that's coming too. We can get into that another day. But beyond that, there's the tyranny of leaders. Then there is the tyranny of a weaponized judicial system. That doesn't just limit itself to the Merrick Garland DOJ. Although the most obvious and egregious examples are definitely locked up in Merrick Garland's Department of so-called Justice and his Stasi FBI. The Attorney General of the state of Texas, Ken Paxton. All of my Texas guys that are on here, I know you have been following this. Ken Paxton. Let me just give you the short breakdown of this as I understand it, and any of my Texan guys can jump in and correct me if they think that I am wrong. Oh, no, we're going to get to that, believe me. If you think that I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. But at the root of this, what made his so-called offenses so egregious was the fact that he called the integrity of the FBI into question. So this still roots back to Merrick Garland and the DOJ in a roundabout way. It's just the deep state servants within the state of Texas. Let me say that again. Within the state of Texas. Reddest of the red. Wild westest of the Wild West. Handguns and barbecue, baby. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of the state of Texas, was politically crucified, was hung out to dry by the mainstream media. And, as I pointed out last week, came out in testimony that he was done so on no evidence. They brought this impeachment hearing against him on no evidence. They pressed the guy, and he said, yes, when we went to the FBI, we had no evidence. And here's the kicker. Even the Merrick Garland DOJ and FBI would not indict Ken Paxton. So what happened? They start an impeachment inquiry. Well, as of this week, all 16 impeachment charges, Ken Paxton was acquitted. What do you think is going to happen now? What do they say when you come for the king? You better take him down? Let me see, where was that? Bush cartel assisted in the sham regarding Paxton. Yes, I completely agree. Rhino Republicans, deep state mechanics, basically. They tried to take him down. They failed. This is what I keep getting back to. We are winning. Keep Texas out of your mouth. You're not going to mention Sheila Jackson Lee, our future mayor. Yeah, that is going to happen, by the way, Ryan. You know Sheila Jackson Lee is going to get elected mayor of Houston. She's not actually going to get elected in the same sense that, Lena Hidalgo did not get elected this time around, but she will be mayor. But we're not going to get caught up in that. We are winning. They came for Paxton and they thought they had the full weight of their system behind them. And maybe, just maybe, they did. If they did, that's even better. The New Mexico governor, maybe she is Stasi Karen enough. Maybe she is just Stasi Karen enough to have pulled that off on her own. But I don't believe that. And I don't think you do either. I think she had the full power of the machine behind her, and she thought that she would get less pushback than she did. And she got a ton of pushback from the very attack dogs that she was counting on to enforce the law. And I want you guys to follow me on that. There are some of you out there, dude. There are some of you out there that are still of the opinion that the only good cop is a dead one. All cops are bastards. Some of you out there that still believe that in the don't tread on me flag that the cops are actually going to be the boot. You know what? On a lot of levels, you can make a case for that. But if you think they're all lost, Joey and I have had this discussion probably more than anybody else who's present on this thread, at least. Yes, substantial amount of law enforcement, particularly municipal and metropolitan police departments, are going to break on the side of the power structure. That's how it works historically. Military falls on the side of the people. The cops wind up being the attack dogs for the state. That's how it breaks down. One word you got to keep in mind: sheriff. Highest constitutional law enforcement officer in any county in the United States. And it was the sheriff's department that flat out said, I'm not gonna enforce this. Here in Spokane, Washington, people run hot and cold on Sheriff Ozzie, who just recently left. People ran hot and cold on Sheriff Ozzie, but right after Katrina, he came out with an order here for Spokane County that said under no emergency circumstances will you even be able to attempt to confiscate civilian guns, because he saw what happened in NOLA. Talk to your sheriffs, people. Do not blindly think, oh, the thin blue line, dude, we got to stand with the blue, bro. No. That is just as servile and just as counterproductive, if not more so. But to instantly write them off, particularly sheriffs who are true to their oath and have publicly stood for their oath, to write them off simply because they are part of the boot, part of the blue line. What have I always said here? Battle we got coming, physical and spiritual. We need all hands on deck, people. Alienating people who could be very, very powerful allies is not a luxury that we can afford right now. There's at least a couple of you out there that are like, yeah, man, what kind of patriot are you, dude? Man, founders be stacking bodies. All right, well, put on your Hawaiian shirt and show me something, Sparky. Because last I checked, you ain't out in nobody's face. Neither am I. We're not there yet. I can tell you who's going to show up when we are. And I can tell you here in Spokane County that part of the people that are going to show up when we are is going to be Spokane County Sheriff's deputies. Let me give you an idea, a little personal. Yeah, speaking with regard to the justice system. And Sonny, I'm looking forward to seeing you this week. Dozens of dudes will be doing 10 to 20 years for walking into Capitol on J6. Yeah, justice. I'll go you one better, Sonny. There's one guy going to be doing 26 years that wasn't even there. You know, that white supremacist, Enrique. Different rant. Yep, ask him if he's a constitutional sheriff. If not, boot him. Simple. Very, very simple. I'm going to tell you something. We were shutting down the dope house. You guys remember the Dope House Chronicles? Right across the street when I bought this house, there was an active dope house. It took us several years, several fatal overdoses, 3 SWAT team raids to shut the damn thing down. We got it shut down. I had talks. I was on a first name basis with every damn deputy in this that patrolled in this neighborhood, and half the Spokane Valley cops that patrolled in this neighborhood. I had better experiences with the sheriff's department guys. The sheriff's department guys were the first SWAT team raid. And they wanted to go a lot harder, a lot more often. But we had many talks about that, and deputies speaking face to face to me. He was like, look, and they agreed with me. Thank God the Constitution gives the same protection to these scumbags that it does to everybody else. It would be a hell of a lot easier to do this if they didn't have the same protections. But if they don't have the protections, then neither do you and neither do I. Word from the mouth of sheriff's deputies. And they weren't just buying time, and they weren't just making excuses, because a week later, when they did have everything together, they were the ones kicking in the front door and running through that fatal funnel. But a tyrant by any other name, on the flip side of the law enforcement equation, any cop, and I'm going to say this, my support for legitimate constitutional law enforcement, I don't need to go back over it because I just covered it. If you are enforcing, if you are in New Mexico, for instance, and you are an officer who is enforcing this unconstitutional order, you are a pig worthy of a coward's death. I will not mourn your passing. I'll pray for your family, but I will not mourn your passing. You picked your side. If you are a law enforcement officer going into churches and pulling people out for public gatherings in the inevitable next round of public health emergency shutdowns, you are a pig worthy of a coward's death. I will not mourn your passing. I'll pray for your family. A tyrant by any other name is still a tyrant. If it is a tyrant, and instead of calling her a tyrant, you call her governor, she's still a tyrant. If you are an unelected public official, I don't know, I can't think of anyone. If you are an unelected public official and you are a tyrant, usurping power that was not delegated to you by a single voting member of the American public, and they call you a public health expert, you're still a tyrant. And if you are a law enforcement officer and you enforce unconstitutional edicts, and I'm gonna smoke some people here, or if you are an American soldier, and I don't think there are going to be a great many of you. There might be in the new woke military, who knows? General Milley running the show, who knows? There might be a whole drag queen battalion waiting to take me out. I don't know. If you are a member of law enforcement or the military and you enforce these orders, these unconstitutional edicts, these maxims, these executive orders, or God forbid it get to the point where they actually have enough to carry it through the entire legitimate constitutional legislative process, but you know these laws to be unconstitutional and you enforce them anyway, you are a pig worthy of a coward's death. I will not mourn your passing. I will pray for your family. You simply don't have time for it anymore. I don't care what you choose to call a tyrant. Fundamentally, you've heard me say it before and I stick to it. Fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. They know a tyrant when they see one. They claim, oh, I couldn't have known he was a tyrant. No, you knew he was a tyrant. You're just a coward. You can't call tyranny to its face. Tyrant by any other name is still a tyrant. Call it governor, call it cop, call it soldier, call it public official. A tyrant by any other name is still a tyrant. And the father of lies uses the cowardice of people and the tyranny of willing minions to carry through what we have going forward. There's no way around that. A tyrant by any other name is still a tyrant. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And the old quotable Bart, tyranny never corrects itself. What was it Mencken said in the opener? Tyranny must be fought hard in the beginning if it is to be opposed at all. Getting back to Shakespeare. Treason doth never prosper. Why? For if it prosper, none dare call it treason. How many treasonous acts do we watch on a daily basis, but none dare call it treason? We know what we're up against. Nothing to get depressed about. I read the book. We win. But we can forsake our own responsibilities at our own expense, and many choose to do that very thing. We no longer have that as a luxury that we can afford. Getting back to bullet point number 2, beans, bullets, and band-aids, revisited. Tyrant by any other name, and that tyranny is afoot. You can do whatever intellectual gymnastics you find necessary to justify in your own head how we aren't where we actually are. You can say that the way that the Merrick Garland Justice Department is prosecuting people is 100% even-handed and not politically motivated. You're a liar, but you have the right to say that. You can't make a case for it, but you have the right to say it. You can postulate that the media gatekeepers, all mainstream media gatekeepers, let me say that again for you guys that are like, yeah, dude, but I watch Fox. No. All mainstream media gatekeepers are propaganda ministers. Period. End of statement. Done. Goebbels, in his day, having Leni Riefenstahl and all of the massive talents at generating propaganda at his disposal, could not have dreamed of what the Bolsheviks, who would ultimately defeat their army, would have at their disposal. Fast forward 20, 30 years, and you look at Pravda and TASS, all the Soviet news agencies. Goebbels would have salivated at the thoughts of the power that they had. And they thought, oh, we've reached the pinnacle and never get any better than this. Could you imagine, Sonny, anybody else who lived through the end of the Soviet era? Sonny, I'd love to hear your take on that. The people who were the highest ranking officials and reporters at Pravda and TASS, could you imagine them having the power that major media platforms have today, and in particular that social media platforms have, in the interests of working for the regime? They couldn't have dreamed of this. We have to be able to call it what it is. We are dealing with a tyrannical regime. We are dealing with a weaponized Justice Department. It's terrible. Our best days are behind us. Shut up. That's not where I'm going with this. We just have to be able to acknowledge structural, factual, ODB, ODP, man, objective, demonstrable, provable. These are objective, demonstrable, provable facts. We have a regime that is hostile to their political enemies and has weaponized the Justice Department. The FBI is functioning as a de facto Stasi. The mainstream media and most social media platforms are functioning as the de facto Ministry of Propaganda. These are just facts. What does this have to do with beans, bullets, and band-aids revisited? Well, because, as I am constantly letting you guys know, you had better have your house in order. Time is getting very short, guys. I'm just going to break this down for you. This isn't trying to shake people off the fence kind of thing, or really to impress upon you the sense of urgency that you should have developed on your own by now. But we are going into the 2024 election, and the landscape is somewhere we have never been. Never. You have the party in power using the resources of the government to persecute and prosecute and harass their political opposition. Sorry, but it's a fact. At the same time, we are looking at the constitutional prospect of having the leading candidate for one of the major parties be under indictment or possibly a convicted felon, depending on how far and how hard they're willing to push this. But ultimately, unless and until you could have this doddering cadaver taken out and they could throw in someone at the last minute, a Newsom, a Whitmer, who knows? Going into this next year, all bets are off. And considering what the regime has already done, they're willing to take it the whole distance. If that means taking us to war in a country that most of you can't find on a map, couldn't think of one right off the top of my head, then that's what it's going to take. If that takes shutting everything down on the basis of a public health emergency, why do you think the New Mexico governor floated this when she did? On the premise that she did. At the same time, they're reintroducing mask mandates and talking about new vaccines and things like that. They wanted to see if this public health emergency thing was still going to fly, and it didn't. Biden doesn't know what planet he's on. He's not making the calls. But the people behind the scenes who are, they took note of that. Bet your ass they did. How they're going to react to it, who knows? But those two words are the most important. Who knows? We are through the looking glass, people. We have crossed the Rubicon. Pick your metaphor. We are in completely uncharted territory right now. I wish I had better news, but I don't. Where does it leave us, Bart? What do we do? What do we do? What you already should have done. I promised you guys I was going to give some more sources that I follow on a day-to-day basis rather than me just doing political stuff every time on Facebook. I've given some of those sources. I'm going to give some more right now. Substack, cannot stress this enough. And in fact, I am on, you can find my Substack, Reverend Bart at Substack.com. That is my Substack. But you need to be on Substack. Why? Because if the mainstream legacy media is functioning as a de facto propaganda ministry, where do you go for information? Well, unfortunately, it's going to require, wait for it, critical thinking and some deep diving on your part. You're going to have to put some work in, and you're going to have to put some, how much is the truth worth to you? A lot of Substacks, including mine right now, are free. Taibbi is on there, free. And also with a subscription thing. Guys that pay subscription, you get a little bit more. Greenwald is there. Taibbi is there. Barry Weiss is there. Alex Berenson is there. Peter McCulloch is there. Substack. If you want the truth, and again, just like the people at Pravda and TASS thought it just never was going to get any better on locking down the propaganda. Back then, young Russians were lucky to be able to get a small printing press and put out flyers to get opposition information out. Maybe underground radio stations with small transmitters. A lot of that. That's Substack now. No editorial control, no censorship, no ads. If you're getting your media for free, you are the product. They're taking and selling your information. This is how it works. If you're getting it from a mainstream source, they are selling you advertising. If you're getting it from any other free source, they are taking your information that they get, whether you're using a VPN or not, and they're selling that information. You are the product. Substack, you're going to get a lot more accurate, a lot more well thought out, a lot more well read, well researched. You're going to get that. You may have to pay a couple of dollars a month for some of the high level guys like Taibbi. I promise you, you spend more than that on your coffee a day. Even if you're getting coffee at the gas station, you're spending $2 for a cup of coffee. $2 will get you a month of some of the high level writers on Substack, and you're going to be getting as close to the truth as we're able to get anymore. Worth the investment. Okay. You should be reading, and this gets back to my Beans, Bullets, and Band-Aids revisited bullet point. You should be reading Survival Blog. James Wesley Rawls, survivalblog.com. You should be reading that every single day. Bookmark it. Open your day with it. They don't play to the mall ninjas and the armchair commandos. They don't play to the tactical Ted crowd. It's just good, solid advice. some of the things that Ryan had mentioned earlier with regard to the $5 billion debt we had going on. Let me scroll up and see if I can find that. 5.5 billion in debt daily for the next 5 years, right? And that's worth looking at. These are things that you need to take into account. You were looking at potential embargoes. Ryan, I'm scrolling up for that. The upcoming Saudi, China, Russia oil embargo. The BRICS nations, right? And that could play out any number of ways. We have been slavishly devoted to the Saudis in spite of their terror sponsorship for years and years and years to give us a tactical foothold in that region. Does that mean they're going to side with us? No. And if we've eliminated our own energy industry, where is that going to put us if the rest of the nations decide to shut off the oil supply and we refuse to ramp up U.S. production? See, it's really funny, man. For about 4 years, we had this orange guy in office, and we were a net energy exporter. We didn't have to worry about things like that. But those days are all gone. That oil supply could be shut off tomorrow. You understand this, right? And you understand that with the regime in power and our own production abilities cut. Thank you, James. If you haven't noticed stupid by now, you're sure not going to see it. True. They cut off the tap. We're screwed. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, and if you could find gasoline, it's $10 to $15 a gallon. All it's going to take is one missile strike into a Saudi oil field. You know, the Iranians launched missile strikes into Saudi oil fields when Trump was in office. You know what we did? Nothing, because at the time we had our own production up. We were net energy exporters. We didn't have to care. We have traded that off. Some would say on purpose. It's outside the scope of this lecture. Keep your tank topped off every single day. Every single day. Without exception. Make it a part of your daily routine. On your way out, when you stop to get that cup of coffee, take an extra couple of minutes and put that extra couple of gallons in. Top it off. Unless you are on a long road trip where you know there is going to be gas at the next station, you should never be below 3/4 of a tank and absolutely never be below half a tank. Top your tank off every day. Two things are going to happen with this. You can look up the YouTube video that did on a YouTube channel. Two things are going to happen with this. Number one, you're going to get a better idea of how much fuel you're actually using on a day-to-day basis. But number two, you are always going to have a full tank of gas. Think about the majority of people that roll around with a quarter tank of gas. If something kicks off tomorrow, assuming there is gas, you're going to have to buy 15 to 20 gallons of that gasoline at $10 to $15 a gallon. If you're going to have to buy 2, maybe 3 gallons at $15 a gallon, and you're going to have a full tank. Maybe there's no gas available. If they have a quarter tank of gas, how far are they going to be able to get out of whatever the hell is chasing them? Economic disaster, social unrest, police state, flips the government. You got tanks rolling in the street, zombies, wildfires, what the hell ever. How far are you going to get on a quarter tank? How many of my Houston people that have been through hurricane evacuations know what happens in those situations? Top your tank off every single day religiously. Make it a part of your lifestyle. End of story, period. Food. I promise, guys, I'm going to repost all of this stuff on the fan page and the personal page. And when I repost it, I need to be able to count on you guys to repost my repost and get the information out. Because as I've said, I'm not feeding a damn one of y'all. But when I repost it, I need you to repost the repost and get this information out. There is still time that with an expenditure of $400 to $500, you can put away a reasonable storage plan that is going to keep you at least from starving to death. There is still time to do that. Beans, bullets, band-aids, bleach. That's the fourth B. James Wesley Rawls, beans, bullets, band-aids. Guns and ammo, we have covered ad nauseum. There's no need to revisit that. You either have a gun and ammunition or you don't. You either have trained with it or you haven't. Expect results accordingly. I'm not going to revisit that. Pointless. Band-Aids, first aid supplies, cheap, very, very cheap. When I repost and you repost the repost of all these articles, I cover that as well. Basic first aid supplies. For $500, 1 or 2 weeks paycheck, maxing out one of your credit cards, robbing a liquor store, whatever you got to do. I am not advocating that, by the way. You can dig yourself in a little bit more than the next guy. What did I say about the parable? That's not a joke. It's a parable. I don't have to outrun the bear. I just got to outrun you. You guys know the parable. You're never going to outrun the bear. September is Emergency Preparedness Month, by the way. We should have brought that up as well. Only matters when nothing else does. Preparation has no cost, but it may save everything. Thank you, guys. Read it again. Brother James Pearson. Preparation only matters when nothing else does. Preparation has no cost, but may save everything. Now, the first retort you're going to hear is, actually, it does have a cost, James. We got to pay money for this. We got to pay, and there's no guarantee we're going to get. Well, you know what? Great. If you spend all that money and it doesn't wind up being a requirement and we live to a ripe old age and die in our sleep, it'll be the best money you ever wasted. Quotable Bart, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Text in, you're ready and nothing happens, no big deal. If you ain't ready and something does, amen. My brother in Christ, amen. 22, the perfect round for bear. Yep. You shoot the neighbor and let the bear catch him. Well played. Well played, Joey. It is just like life insurance. George, I'm glad you made it out, man. I didn't see you drop in. Glad you're here. Yes, it is just like life insurance. It is absolutely just like life insurance. You are not paying for anything but peace of mind. But you got this and you got that. Damn, man, what are you afraid of? Nothing. I'm running to the hills. I'm running to the mountains. I'm running to the government shelter. Where are you going? I'm going home. Square it up, people. Tick tock, tick tock. It's ticking. As I was saying before, if they are doing to Ken Paxton what they are doing to Ken Paxton in the state of Texas, what do you think is going to happen in the blue states? What do you think is about to happen there? We got to look at it. New Mexico governor. I live in a blue state. I live on the red side of a blue state, but I'm still living in a blue state. Square it up, people. That's all I can tell you at this point. I am, give you my word, I'm going to find those posts that I had about preparation, the several stops, and some of you guys may even, I'm sure some of you guys know the post that I'm talking about. It's just a very long post. This is what you do with $400 to get your ass in gear and go. Yes. A lot of you guys remember the post. When I post this stuff, I want you guys to repost it. I'm going to be posting some old videos from my YouTube channel back when the YouTube channel was primarily going to be prepper oriented. Some of the old videos, because again, September is National Preparedness Month. I've got a few more videos. I'm going to repost them. I want you to repost the repost. Why, Bart? If you haven't seen it by now, yeah, you're right. Most people, if they haven't gotten around to it by now, they're not going to, and that's fine. But at the very least, clear your conscience, man. Clear your conscience. And help the people that can be reached. There's still a few of them out there. Well, I hope for that. Keep them in your prayers. If you are a person of faith, keep them in your prayers that God would give them the discernment. God would bless them to open their eyes and their minds, their hearts, and their souls. Because what's coming is going to transcend the physical. This is all within the confines of the supposed land of the free. Now, what happens when we bump that up to a global scale? I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. Gives you standing to say, yeah, it does give you standing to say, I told you so, right? I had a really good discussion over late breakfast, early lunch with a good friend of mine, Andrew Rivers, a comedian buddy of mine. He played over in Post Falls last night. We checked him out. You guys know him. He's the guy that made me internet famous as Bomb Shelter Guy. We always wind up having productive talks. Uh, when I met the kid, he was hard liberal, but he's a truth seeker above and beyond everything else, and he's opened his eyes to a hell of a lot of things. And we always wind up having really, really good conversations. And we talked about that today because he is at a point in his life, and he understands that his former team, right, that the people on the left are very, very big on pissing on America. They like to do that. We were conceived in slavery and born in blood and exploitation of the native peoples. Yeah, historically, there's a support group for that. They're called Everyone, and they meet at the UN, last I checked. But what he's realized as he gets older is that he is able to have the lifestyle that he has because he lives in a free, ostensibly free, industrialized nation in the West with ostensibly representative government, with ostensibly a capitalist economy. And for all our flaws, again, people like to piss on all of our failings, but nobody wants to talk about the successes, particularly on the left, because it's easier to tear down something than it is to build, particularly when your intellect could not have conceived of such a thing, let alone built it. I can hear y'all in the background. Like, yeah, well, it was built on the backs of the exploited and the billionaire class. All right, you know what, dude? No broke person has ever given me a job. No broke person has ever invented anything particularly useful. And when they did, they weren't broke anymore. They sold the idea. That's the principle. You can be anything in this country. Not so much the case anywhere else. Is this country flawed? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. You've heard me say it before, and I stand by it. We are the healthiest patient on the cancer ward. And collectively, the West, this all came up in this conversation that I had with Andrew, by the way. Collectively, in the West, and when I say the West, I mean Europe, the UK, the United States, all the things that manifest themselves as the elements of Western civilization, dating all the way back to the Greeks, dating all the way back to the Romans. The West and the cultural standards thereof have done more to elevate the entire world than any other civilization in the history of mankind. Period, full stop. This is not open for discussion. He realizes how blessed he is to live in a country like America, to be able to make the living that he does. He tells jokes to strangers and he gets paid. He gets to travel the country, see things. You know how blessed I am? At 51 years of age. Thank you, right? Exactly. Even our poor people are fat. The lowest on the socioeconomic spectrum live at a level here in the industrialized West that kings of ancient past could not have dreamt of. I myself, I'm in my mid 50s now. And at the age of 51, barely 51, just turned 51, a close brother of mine opened a door for me. Now, I could have pissed and moaned about how bad I had it and all the things I was up against and made any excuses. Hey, man, my hip's already jacked up. I can't put that kind of physical strain on it. Or I could do what I did. Show me another country in the world where a 51-year-old man can put a year in, and go from being a scrub, scraping and scrimping and starving, to on track to make six figures. Putting in a year. You know how much time a year is in the grand scheme of things? Show me another country where you can do that. Put 1 year in. Put 1 year in and not even do anything monumental. I didn't invent anything. I didn't create anything. I didn't start a business. And in 1 year, from putting in the work and taking advantage of the opportunities that came to me as a result of living here in America, in the Western industrialized nation, ostensibly free, in 1 year, I went from broke and scraping to six figures. Where else can you do that? People like to piss on this place because they're oppressed. The bullet point that I'm touching on here is the clash of civilizations and the sliding scale of oppression. Okay? And I'm going to call out both sides here. This was the core of the conversation that Andrew and I had today. We are in a clash of civilizations. And all of our rivals on this front, they intend to win. All of the silliness that we allow ourselves to get caught up in, all of the minutiae, the ridiculous, superficial nonsense that we allow ourselves to be distracted by, they don't have time for that because they have what we no longer have, the courage to call it a clash of civilizations, and they fully intend to win. A lot of people, particularly on the left, would say that maybe they should win, particularly because the Chinese are a communist country. And lefties never met a communist country they didn't like or wouldn't excuse the atrocities of, more to the point. We get caught up in what oppression allegedly is in the confines of the West. Do you know how good we have to have it for anyone to give a damn what name you use or what pronoun you choose to be called, to the point where they can codify it into law that there will be repercussions if you refuse to call this person what they want to be called? This is oppression to you? Living the lifestyle that you live in the country which has given you the ability to live that lifestyle. I'm not telling you shut up, sit down, and like it. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't try to improve your station, but for you to piss on the entire system and say that it must be torn down for a momentary insult to your completely overinflated sense of self-importance, go to hell. Don't waste my time with that. Particularly since we're on that issue, and pronouns and gender and every other look. I care about winning. That's why right this minute I don't care about your delicate sensibilities. Because if we allow your delicate sensibilities to preoccupy our station and our efforts, we wind up losing. We wind up losing. And if we lose that clash of civilizations, I don't want to break this to you, Sparky, but the two biggest ideologies that we contend with on the world stage in that clash of civilizations against the West, one is communism, the other is radical Islam. Radical Islam. I repeat myself. Why don't you take a good look historically at how well gay and trans people are treated by those two cultures? Sliding scale of oppression because you don't get your first choice on who bakes your wedding cake. Still get the damn cake. You just don't get your first choice of baker, and you're oppressed. If they win, they throw you off buildings and cut off your heads. So pardon me if I don't have time for your pronouns right this second. We can deal with that later. Once we have won and we no longer have rivals in this clash of civilizations, I'm all about putting 100% effort to making sure your precious little feelings don't get hurt. Right now, we need to win. Somebody in another conversation that I was having on this very thing with regard to that particular social group in the military, because they know what a fan I am of Bill Hicks, and they threw Bill Hicks up in my face. Yeah, but you remember what Bill said about that? Why should you care about trans people in the military? Aren't you just a bunch of hired killers? Yeah, yeah, they are. Particularly Marines. December 5, we're out there. Are they just a bunch of killers? Yeah. That's what it takes to win in a worst case scenario. Clash of civilizations. So even assuming you're ha ha ha, they're just a bunch of hired killers, even assuming we concede that point, we better have the best damn hired killers we can come up with. And something tells me that that money could be better spent on, oh, I don't know, body armor than gender transition surgeries. I'm not unsympathetic. I just have a straight sense of priorities. Right now, if y'all don't mind, could we win? Could we win? And I'm going to call out the other side too, particularly the cult of the carpenter, as Ryan artfully puts it. You're not oppressed either. Not yet. Are they putting the push on? Are they making it difficult for you? Yes. Is there an active push to erase your cultural standards? Is there an active push to belittle and demean and marginalize your belief system? Absolutely. But you are not oppressed. Not yet. Not yet, you're not. But getting back to the opener, if I'm going to call out both of these sides for where they get it wrong, I got to give y'all credit for where you get it right. Because, like Mencken said, it has to be opposed early if it is to be opposed at all. So I understand from the point of the LGBT, from the point of the LGB community, I get it. But right now, y'all ain't hurting. Right now, y'all ain't hurting by a damn sight. So shut up. The one case that the Carpenter kids can make is that nobody shut down. She's a Pomeranian. She's a Pomeranian. He's really want a mastiff in a fight. Costs more to feed, but the mileage worth the fuel. Thank you again, Brother James, with the perfect analogy at the perfect moment. Any way that we feel we are oppressed right now, any of us, is all relative. I get scowls when I tell people, hey man, God bless. I get chuckles, particularly coming out of, where I've come out of. I say, hey, yeah, man, I'll keep you in my prayers. Okay, cool. I'm not oppressed. I'm not oppressed. Not yet. We're going to get to that here in a minute. I'm not oppressed. You don't get your first choice of baker, but you still get your damn wedding cake. You're not oppressed. You're walking around with substantial facial hair, insisting that you're a woman, and somebody calls you sir. You're not oppressed. You're offended. Big difference. And nobody gives a shit that you're offended. Just like nobody gives a shit. Nobody should give a shit if I'm offended at anything. Nobody should give a shit. Doesn't mean anything. You're not oppressed. On that sliding scale of what we were willing to or what we were willing to tolerate, what we were willing to advocate in the quest to win that clash of civilizations, it is all relative. I do not care if they completely disallow every single member of particular demographics in the military if we win. If we win, I don't care. I don't care that less than 5% of the population, even 10% of the population, feels marginalized because they're not allowed in the military as long as it is conducive to doing what you guys are always joke about the military doing. Aren't you guys just a bunch of hired killers? Yeah, they are. We're going to need that to win. So anything that undermines their efficiency as a fighting force, as a killing force, as a bunch of hard killers, bet your ass I'm going to oppose that. You're not oppressed. You won't know oppression until we lose this clash of civilizations. It is only the West that enables you to live the life that you do now. You don't have to like that you don't get 100% of your way 100% of the time, and nobody cares. It's easy for you to say, Mr. White Privilege. All right, yeah. Clever fallback plan. Is that all you got? Don't look now, Sparky, but it was white Europeans dating all the way back to the Greeks and the Romans that brought you this magnificent civilization in which we live. This is the West. This is our blood. If you are going to mandate that we have to bow and genuflect and prostrate ourselves for all the atrocities for which we have been responsible, and you can make a case for that, then I'll be damned if I'll stand by and let you tell me that we cannot thump our chest and take credit for all of the great things that the West and Western civilization has brought to us collectively as a planet, as a species. Western civilization is God's highest expression on this earth. I said what I said. And without it, none of the things that you're all bent out of shape about matter. There are many of you who, as far as I am concerned, are enemies within. Some of you without even realizing it. You piss and you moan and you undermine. You jump on board because you think you are doing the right thing based on your emotional input. Well, I'm standing up for the downtrodden. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because those supposed downtrodden and supposed oppressed would not exist were it not for the fact of Western civilization. Particularly the alphabet people. Do you know how, Che Guevara, you college lefties with the Che Guevara t-shirts, why don't you do a little homework on how Che treated homosexuals? You guys with the rainbow flag next to refugees are welcome here. We love Muslim immigrants. Why don't you take a look at how Islam treats homosexuals? All religions are equally violent and equally hateful. Maybe in doctrine. But you show me one, just one, Christian country in the developed industrialized world, just one, that executes homosexuals as a matter of state policy, and I'll shut right up. Because I can rail you off 3 in the Muslim world that do that right now. And a couple in Africa. Because that's going to be your first retort. Well, what is Christian African countries? That is not the industrialized world, buddy. That's a whole different argument, isn't it? You're not oppressed. But I got news for you. Neither am I. Not yet. You want to say that there are people out there that hate you, that people are using coded speech to say this and say that so they don't have to say how they really feel? Okay, that cuts both ways. You do the same about me. You do the same about me and everybody who has this pale ass skin, anybody who wears a cross or a hammer. You do the same thing. You don't speak what's really on your mind. If you could wave a magic wand and have your way, you would have us all incarcerated or killed. At the very least, Clockwork Orange style re-education. No, I believe in the agenda. No, please make it stop. Give me something to be singing, Matt. If you could. Yeah, that kind of stroke, you would. You know this. It's okay to acknowledge that. I don't get upset. Not in the least. The difference is the ones on this side who really do feel that way, they'll tell you. They'll tell you point blank. Usually with a word starting with F. You know what? I don't break bread with those motherfuckers either. You guys know my history, and I have never run from it. That's why it's so damn funny when people love to pull up that homophobe stuff. I love it. It's cool. Up to and including, right? The alphabet mafia gets what they say on air, up to and including wishing death upon us. Yeah. So don't talk to me about insulted. Don't talk to me about oppressed. But for my Christ, my brothers in Christ, we're not oppressed either. Not yet. Not yet. Does the enemy control every facet, every cultural facet of any import, academia, entertainment? Clever, George. Academia, entertainment, media, government. The other side controls it all. Are they weaponizing the Department of Justice against pro-life and pro-Christian activists? Yes. Did they specifically issue edicts shutting down churches on the basis of public health emergencies? Yes. Yes, they did. But we're not persecuted. Not yet. Not yet. I cannot, in clear conscience, for the sake of ideological consistency and intellectual honesty, condemn one side for claiming oppression on the most specious of circumstances and not call out my own people. We are not oppressed yet. Are we getting pushed? Sure. Is there an active effort to take us in that direction? Best believe. Do they admit to that publicly? Oh, yeah. Very comfortable with it. But we're not oppressed. Not yet. What do you mean we're not oppressed? Because, again, in terms of clash of civilization and on a historical timeline, we still don't have the proper perspective. What do you mean, Bart? You see, we're not being impressed. Cultural elements turned against us. Let me, thank you, Mark. Rona lockdowns were a test to see how much work is needed for the next level against the citizens. Agreed. Agreed. And the only citizens that push back against that are people who are of a conservative or a Christian bent, right? We can go ahead and just say that, and I think that is a reasonably accurate statement. Why? Because Christians and conservatives understand this. That's why. I have been scathing against so-called Christians who talk the talk and have through the entire crisis. Thank you. Thank you, Clint. Hey, I'm breathing, bro. Breathe, breathe. I would refuse the mark even if it cost me my life. A lot of y'all wouldn't refuse a jab just because it might cost you your job. We can get into that. But that's going to be the closer. We'll get into that in a second. We're not persecuted. Not yet. My brother in Christ, Greg Sparkman, posted this. And I reposted it onto my fan page. That's where I keep most of everything now, particularly the political stuff. Joey, you know I'm the king of the backsliders when it comes to posting political stuff, but I'm really, again, a whole lot of things changed, and I'm feeling really, really convicted in my heart these days. I don't have the energy, and I don't want to waste a lot of time. In any case, we're not being oppressed. Brother in Christ Gregory Sparkman posted this, and I reposted it onto the fan page about how the apostles died, the first followers of Christ, true followers of Christ, the people responsible for spreading the gospel and taking the church far and wide. I will, brother. I will. I will definitely let you know, James. Thank you for that. When Christians talk about we're being oppressed, not yet. Not by a damn sight. If I have to tell the alphabet people shut the hell up, that's not oppression. I have to, for the sake of intellectual honesty and ideological consistency, call out my brothers and sisters in Christ in the same thing. We are not oppressed. Not yet. You want to see what oppression is? It's coming. You'll know it when it gets there. Believe me, you will know it when it gets there. These are how the apostles died. First 12 disciples of Christ, his apostles. Matthew, Gospel of Matthew, martyred in Ethiopia while spreading the gospel. Ethiopia. You guys know your basic geography. Killed by a sword wound. Mark, as in Mark 13, these are the birth pangs, and but their days be numbered. No flesh shall be spared but for the elect. Died in Alexandria, Egypt, after being dragged by horses through the streets until he was dead. You feeling oppressed? Feeling like the world's being a little hard on the Christians right now? Interesting. Luke, hanged in Greece as a result of preaching to the lost and spreading the gospel. John, it's in the revelation of Saint John the Divine, faced martyrdom in Rome, boiled in a huge basin of oil during a wave of persecution, anti-Christian pogrom that was taking place in Rome at the time. Miraculously delivered from death, he was then sentenced to the mines on the prison island of Patmos. He wrote the book of Revelation while in prison after being delivered from martyrdom. He was freed and returned to serve as Bishop of Odessa in modern Turkey. Died as an old man, the only one of the apostles to die peacefully. You still feeling oppressed? Because somebody insists on saying happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas? Feeling oppressed? Peter, crucified upside down on an X-shaped cross. According to the church tradition, it was because he told his tormentors as they're getting ready to crucify him, I am not fit to be executed in the same way as my Lord. Hang me upside down. Sometimes the people with those inverted crosses, most of them, it's safe to make an assumption. However, one chick who goes by Roma Army on YouTube, and she had to clarify because she had a number of inverted crucifixes, and it was her way of saying that she was not worthy of Christ and not worthy to die the way that Christ died because St. Peter was crucified the same way. Is she making that up? I don't know. I find it credible, and I happen to like her channel, and I happen to like all the stuff she has going on. But again, are you feeling persecuted? Really? Okay. Well, since you're really up against it like that, James, the leader of the church in Jerusalem, thrown over 100 feet down from the southeast pinnacle of the temple when he refused to deny his faith in the carpenter kid. Thrown over 100 feet. When they found him at the bottom, he was still alive. They beat him to death with clubs. You go back to do the homework, that was the same cliff that Satan had taken Christ to when he was tempted in the desert. You feeling oppressed? Feeling put upon? Really making it rough on us, huh? James, son of Zebedee, fisherman by trade, strong leader of the church, beheaded in Jerusalem. Roman officer who guarded James watched amazed as James defended his faith at the trial. The officer in charge of his prosecution was so impressed with his defense of his faith that when they took James of Zebedee out to be executed by beheading, that Roman officer confessed Christ, knelt beside, and was beheaded side by side with James. You feeling oppressed? You want to tell me how rough they're making it on Christians? Not yet. Bartholomew, my namesake, also known as Nathaniel, missionary to Asia, witness for our Lord in present-day Turkey. He was martyred for preaching in Armenia, where he was flayed with a whip and then skinned alive. Very impressive statues based on that. You should take a look. You feeling oppressed yet? Andrew, crucified, same as Peter, ex-shaped cross and Patras, whipped severely by 7 soldiers, and then they tied him as he was sinking and losing blood on the cross, tied him to hold him up to where he could breathe so they could prolong his agony. His followers reported that when he was led towards the cross, he saluted it and said, "I have long desired and expected this happy hour." They looked to prolong his torture, and instead he continued to preach while crucified for 2 days until he finally gave up the ghost. You feeling persecuted, Sparky? They make it a little hard on you for worshiping the boss man and his carpenter kid? Feeling oppressed? Thomas. Sonny, I hope you're still here. Thomas. It was that apostle and his story that actually brought me back to the faith that fateful day. Bone, if you're here, you remember. Sunday of Thomas. He was stabbed with a spear in India during one of his missionary trips to establish a church on the Indian subcontinent. Actually, he got off kind of light looking at these other fellas. Maybe Christ gave him a break because of that whole doubting thing. Who knows? Jude, killed with arrows when he refused to deny his faith. Matthias, the apostle chosen to replace the traitor Judas Iscariot, was stoned to death and then his body beheaded. You feeling oppressed? Do I have contempt for the people that like to piss and moan and cry about how oppressed they are when they have no idea what oppression looks like? You bet your ass. Which means I have to call out my own, or else my integrity counts for nothing. Paul, tortured, beheaded by Nero himself. In AD 67, he endured a lengthy imprisonment, and during that imprisonment, he took advantage of the downtime. Oh, you can't get that book written because you got stuff to do? He was in prison. All of the epistles that he wrote to the churches that he had formed throughout the Roman Empire, those letters became the largest part of the New Testament. Beheaded by Nero, 67 AD. You feeling oppressed yet? I take nothing away from feeling like things couldn't be going, could be going better than they are. But if I'm going to have contempt for weakness and cowardice and whiny pusillanimous is my college word, I got like 3 of those, pusillanimous nonsense, then I have to hold that same contempt across the board. That means when the alphabet people are crying because they can't get their first choice of bakers at a wedding cake, I don't care. Shut up. In the same sense that when you say Merry Christmas and someone insists, I'm going to say Happy Holidays, that's not a war on Christians, Sparky. You are not oppressed. Will we get there? Best believe it. You will know oppression when you feel it. And it might be the last thing that you feel. Alphabet crowd, you will know oppression when we lose, getting back to the original topic, that clash of civilizations. You will know oppression when we lose. Because we spent so much time concerned about your delicate sensibilities instead of making ourselves the proper, righteous, and strong civilization that we have always been. The one that took this highest concept of civilization throughout the world, through conquest, through diplomacy, through development, through elevating everyone that we came in contact with, even the ones that we oppressed and did horrible things to. Ask a Native American going through free college right now. Yeah, we did some horrible stuff. Really, really horrible stuff. How's that working out for you, Sparky? And by the way, what were you doing before we showed up? You ask a black man who is intellectually honest and historically educated, he will tell you that in spite of the horrors of the Middle Passage, the injustice of Jim Crow, the oppression, and every vile thing that this country has ever done to African Americans, he will tell you two things if he is honest. Number one was that it was his own people that sold his people into slavery. We didn't just run through the jungle with drift nets. But he will also tell you that it is better to be a black man in America today than it is to be a black man anywhere else in the world. What do you suppose is going to happen when we lose that clash of civilizations? Why don't you ask sub-Saharan Africa right now that it's the Chinese colonizing instead of the Europeans? Ask them how that works out. Give them 10, 15 years. I can't wait to hear that testimony. You will know oppression when we lose that battle of civilizations. Just like if my brothers and sisters in Christ think that they're oppressed right now? Is there a push on? Did they play their hand out and make it obvious where they were going when they shut down the churches but not the titty bars during COVID? Oh yeah, we're not oppressed yet. We're not oppressed yet. When we lose that clash of civilization, you will know oppression. Why don't you ask people who survived the Soviet era how they treated Christians? Why don't you ask anyone who has fled from North Korea or China how communism treats Christians? Why don't you ask Coptic Christians in Syria how much mercy these beloved Muhammad's minions have shown to them? You are not oppressed. Alphabet people, you are not oppressed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, you are not oppressed. Not yet. But if we lose this clash of civilizations, we will all know oppression on a level that we will pray to any God at that point who's listening, even the ones that you don't profess a belief in, that someone will pull us out of the fire. And those prayers are going to fall on deaf ears. I read the book. I have the faith. I hold it in my heart that we win. But nothing is set in stone. Even in line with Scripture, nothing is set in stone except that final judgment. What's going to bring that day of final judgment? Who can tell? But in my estimation, that clash of civilizations has a ton to do with it. And if that is the case, we had better win. The same things that divide us, that pissing and moaning about how oppressed we supposedly are in the West, are going to be the same ones that bind us together when we realize what we've given up if we lose. Beheadings, castrations, disembowelments, torture. It's all there. You will know oppression when you feel it. So what do we wish to be? Oppression, triggered, or far from the same thing, and triggered is nothing but butthurt, not fact. Agreed? Agreed. I'm going to leave you with a Latin phrase. She used up on their Latin. Esse quam videre. Esse quam videre. To be rather than to seem. As a closer for what we've just gone over, that cuts both ways. We are going to be that strong civilization. We are going to be God's highest expression on this planet. But Christians who think this is oppression, they're not trying to be that. They want to seem that. They're putting on the same mantle of poor me that these alphabet maggots and this Antifa crowd are putting on. We're so downtrodden and oppressed. You don't know what downtrodden and oppressed is. The only viable difference I can see between the two is that at least the Christians, the professed Christians, seek for the West to be the final victors. To what end, I have no idea. Because if they think this is oppression, they're not ready for what's coming, and they're not ready for the fight ahead. Esse quam videre. What does that mean? To be rather than to seem. To be rather than to seem. You want to seem like you're part of a downtrodden, oppressed class, or do you want to actually be downtrodden and oppressed? Can you handle that pain? I got my doubts. Can you handle that struggle? I got my doubts. But if you want to step up, no matter what you are claiming to be, no matter what cause you are claiming to represent, getting back to a tyrant by any other name, how we opened the program, that's how you want to roll. You call yourself a patriot? You call yourself a nationalist? You call yourself anti-authoritarian? You call yourself a Christian when you thump your chest that you would refuse the mark, even though it costs you your life, when you wouldn't refuse a mask or a jab when it might cost you your job. No matter what label you choose to put on yourself, the label that follows it had better be those three Latin words, esse quam videre. Do you want to be, or do you want to seem? Because people, I got precious little patience in my life for people who want to seem, people who want to put on airs, people who want the appearance without the effort, people who want the benefits without the responsibilities, people who want the payoff without putting in the work. That goes across all fields and all standards. I have no time in my life, nor should you, for people who just want to seem. But I will break bread, and I will break my back, and I will break my bones, and I will bleed for the people who are like-minded, kindred spirits, whether you are people of the faith or whether you are followers of Asatru. If you are in the pursuit of righteousness, if you claim the mantle of righteousness, and you don't just want to seem, you want to step up and be, then you put on that mantle, and you put on the armor of God or the shield of Odin. You drape yourself in righteousness, and you stand for what is good and pure in the world. But be that. Be that. Put in the work, no matter what sacrifice is required. Esse quam videre. To be rather than to seem. I'm going to close with a prayer. God, as always, I ask for discernment and I ask for strength. I ask that you help me to take stock of my blessings and realize that for all of the distractions that we get caught up in on a day-to-day basis, all the little setbacks that we give inordinate amounts of attention to, that we are blessed. We are blessed beyond words. We are blessed beyond recognition. And as a show of gratitude for those blessings upon which we have had bestowed, that we seek to do the best that we can with our lives on a physical level, on a spiritual level, to elevate ourselves, mind, body, heart, and soul. And for those who are in the faith, I ask that you bless those efforts to elevate themselves. They may be more solid vessels, better vessels to deliver your message and your will for the world. For those who have not yet come home, I ask that you open their eyes and their hearts, and their souls and their spirits. May we all stand together in strength and in love. I pray in the name of the risen Christ. Amen. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here, man. Thank you for that. Good stuff, man. Like I said at the beginning, we are winning incrementally. It's just a little bit. We just have to remind ourselves that for all the talk, and we are right to criticize those other folks for claiming oppression where none exists, but we have to be willing to check ourselves. For all the talk about how hard we've got it, we are blessed. Does that mean don't do anything to improve our station? Does that mean don't call out injustice when we see it? Of course it doesn't mean that. You would never catch me saying that. But we have to keep things in the proper perspective, because if we get caught up and boiled down into all this, oh, poor me, we are not taking the incremental steps that are going to be absolutely necessary going forward. So, have the strength to do that, and have the gratitude to recognize the blessings that have been gifted to your life. Little prayer that I say every morning when I roll out of bed. I hope that you all find that. I hope that you find your strength. I hope that you find the gratitude. And I hope that you do everything you can to advance your station. As I said, physically, mentally, spiritually, you should be trying to improve. You're either growing or you're dying. Just that simple, folks. Wish I had better news, but that is what it is, and the truth is the truth. Speak the truth. Let me just leave you with that. Getting back to your Shakespeare, let justice be done, though the heavens fall. I say speak the truth, though the heavens fall. You will be excoriated. You will be persecuted for having the strength of your beliefs. Again, read how the apostles died. You were not oppressed, but know what is coming down the pipe. Know what is coming down the pipe, and know that if you are a person of faith, you had better be ready to face that. Even though I've returned to the faith, there was a lot of wisdom that I learned through Asatru, right? One of those old proverbs, Ragnar Redbeard, technically Jacqueline, and we could say it, whatever, but it's a saying in the Asatru community. Laughing, let us perish. Amid laughter, let us face our doom. In the meantime, laugh, love, hold each other, be blessed. Realize that we are all like minds and kindred spirits, and we all are on the same page, pushing for the same things. Jude, Bone, Sonny, James, all you guys that I hope to see next week. And God bless you all for coming out. I'm going to go ahead and throw the bumper music on the way out. You guys already know we're going to go out with a little bit of Clutch, as always, because Fortunate Son is about as appropriate as it gets right here. Now, Red Desert has been really cool about letting me use their song. I don't know if Clutch would be so accommodating. But in any case, they haven't shut down the videos yet. So if they have any objections, I'll be glad to change it to something else. I appreciate y'all being here, man. Thanks for coming out. If you guys want to throw me a little bit of coin, I'll pass around the digital collection plate. I'm on Cash App. I'm on Venmo. I'm on PayPal. I'm on Facebook Pay. I'm on, you name it, I'm probably there. If you want to throw a little bit in the digital collection plate, that's outstanding. But I do recognize that we are still living in a Biden economy, tragic as that is, and will be for the foreseeable future. So if you can't kick down, or maybe you just think I'm a jerk and don't want to kick down, that's also okay. Here's what you can do for me, though. Use your own social media platform to spread the word. As Roman is always saying, bump us up in the algorithm. right? Hit the like button, share, do all that good stuff. Give me some thumbs up votes. It helps to get the word out. And in spite of all of that, one thing you can do, not just for me, but for yourself, like my bro Stone says, live the three. Live the three. The signal to noise ratio is all screwed up, people. It's all screwed up. You got to be that signal to break through the noise, man. Got to be that signal to break through the noise and deliver that message with clarity and with resolve. You have to be that light that breaks through the darkness. They will try to demoralize you, man, with the darkness. They will try to bury you in the darkness, demoralize, dehumanize, emasculate you with the darkness. Tell you that our best days are behind us. Tell you that your best days are behind you. Why elevate yourself above your station? You're never going to get anywhere anyway. Those doubts, those lies. He is a lie and the father of it. Do not do the deceiver's work for him. Be that light that breaks through the darkness. But above all things, you're going to live the three. Remember the third and final iron rule: be the strength in a world full of weakness. Because without that strength, you will not be able to be the signal that pierces the noise. Without that strength, you will not be able to be that light that pierces the darkness. I'm not just talking here. Here is good. You got to be strong here. You got to be strong here, and you got to be strong here, man. Find your spine. Let your balls drop. We got a title fight coming up, boys and girls, and I hope you guys have been training. Appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you so much. Love each and every one of y'all, man. Y'all make me feel like less of a lone voice in the wilderness. And that's why I keep coming back. Spread that gospel out there, people. I am the Reverend. We'll see you next Sunday, man. Once again, thanks to each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters in Christ. I love you all, man. Take care of yourself. See you next Sunday. Peace. Much love, y'all. Respect.